What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Assisted Living Investing. Today, I want to talk to you about mistakes that I see people make as they're going to buy land. As people are jumping in, doing all the research, saying, hey, here's a piece of land that I love, I'm going to make an offer. All of a sudden, they get to a place where they're actually not ready to buy the land because they've skipped some steps. So I want to talk to you about that today because I see a common path, and then people reach out to me and say, hey, I got this. And it's like, well, you kind of forgot all these things over here, right? You can't move forward. And I want to share, here is how you can not forget things, but get everything dialed in a sequential way so that you are not potentially losing money and you're not wasting a bunch of time. This will allow you to do a really awesome deal. So when people are getting started, we talk about location selection. It's finding the right spot. It's knowing the market. It's knowing the numbers. It's finding the right piece of land, making an offer. So generally in the process, people get started with their market research, right? They're learning the opportunity in their area. It may be 30, 45 minutes around them saying, hey, these parts of the city are great. These parts are not. This part of my county has great opportunity. The baby boomers are there. The numbers make sense. The income is high, all those kind of things, right? So you start with that, right? Market opportunity. And then you start looking at some land. Okay, if I'm gonna be in the north side of this metro area, here's some properties that are for sale, right? Whether it's vacant land, whether it's a property with a building on it already, but you start going through and doing the rough due diligence. So if you have not yet, I have a free training on this. It is our location selection training. Go through that. It breaks this down step by step. So I'd hit that on the free resources at assistedlivingmansion.com. But back to the show. So we have these steps here, right? You go through, you start looking at land, you start doing due diligence, right? We have that due diligence checklist on there, and you start going through and you start talking to the city and you start looking at the land and utilities and setbacks and all the different things, all right? And you're like, man, you know what? I think this one's great. I think this is the one, right? And so you make an offer on a piece of property. And so now after you make an offer, you say I have 90 days, I have 120 days, whatever it is. So you start diving back into the due diligence, you start spending some money, you start meeting with the city, you start talking to planning and zoning and the fire marshal and going through all the things that it takes to make sure this piece of land is right. And sometimes you have to spend some serious change on these kind of things, right? You might go to the city and they say, okay, cool, yeah, maybe you can do these things here, but we want to see what it looks like. Do you have, civil plans? Do you have a site plan? Do you have, all the calcs on impervious coverage? Do you know how much fire, water, and pressure and all those things you're going to need? And you're like, no, I don't. I like this piece of land. I want to make an offer on it. I want to see if I can buy it. Does this work? And they're like, oh, I can't tell you if it works, right? You need all these engineering reports and you need to have this plan set and all these things for us to tell you if you can do this or not. And sometimes that's real life, right? Some cities are just kind of difficult. So it puts people in a situation where they're like, I really like this land. And so now I got a contract with a civil engineer to create a site plan and start getting my architectural stuff done. I'm like, okay, well, let me start spending this money. Let me go down this rabbit hole to make sure that this piece of land works with the city and all the local AHJs and all those kind of things. So I'll see that kind of frequently, right? And that's totally fine. That is the steps going through this. But what people are leaving off and why I'm filming this is to let you know that that is only half the battle there. While you're going through that, you actually have to be doing all of those things on the location selection side, but you also have to be doing the funding side, right? So another plug, there is a free course, 26 lessons on the funding on the website there. So go through and hit all the funding stuff, because what I'm seeing people do is they'll get to a place where it's like, okay, I made an offer, I'm in escrow, they're asking for, earnest money deposit, and you don't have any of your funding stuff together, right? There's no like bank loan that's ready to go. There's no investors ready to go. It's like, oh, I forgot that part. Okay, let me scramble and now get my bank and my investors. Can I just tell you that's not enough time? You are not going to get this whole thing done in 30 days, in 60 days, right? You're not going to go through all of the things with the bank, raise the money, $500,000, $1 million sometimes, depending on your size of your project, right? That's not going to happen in that short window. So the way that I see this is you actually have kind of two things you have to do simultaneously. You have to do all the location selection stuff concurrently with all of the funding things, and you really need them to tie in and finish around the same time. You have gone through all the due diligence, this site works, you've talked to the city and fire marshal and everything, and simultaneously you've taken all the numbers from those estimates, plugged it into the calculator, the numbers work, you've gotten pre-approved with the bank, right? You have been spending lots of time meeting with investors and doing the presentation and all those kind of things. You have all those tools dialed in so that actually these two things finish and you can get the loan, because you need all of these things in order to actually buy this piece of land. Doesn't matter if you make an offer and it gets accepted. If you can't close on the deal, then you're just wasting time and money, right? So I want to put this in context for how you be successful at these things, because you have to really make sure all of the ducks are in a line for this funding part. So to simplify it for everybody, I break the funding section into 4 components, right? That's your financial tools, that is the bank, that's investors, and that's deal structure. So I want to spend a few minutes kind of breaking down those 4 aspects of it and putting it into perspective for you so that you can be successful with your first deal. So in no particular order, because I think that you kind of have to do all 4 of these steps a little bit simultaneously. But so I'll go roll through these, and I think the most important thing that I want to start with is the investors, right? You have to start day 1. You have to start already. If you're listening to this podcast, today is day 1 for you, right? Make a commitment to do this and start raising money. And let me show you what that means, because I'm not telling you to go talk to investors today. What I'm telling you to do is start documenting your journey today, right? You can share this podcast episode and say, hey, you know what? Check this out. I love what Brett's doing. I'm going to build my own mansion. We're going to take care of grandmas. We're going to make a difference, blah, 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 all the stuff, right? So what I want you to do is start documenting your journey at least 3 times a week. That means posting on social media, whatever you're comfortable with. It could be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, doesn't matter. Just get out there and start getting some action going. And there are some of these socials that I think are more important. I'm not gonna get into that right now. Really, I just want you to start taking action and getting momentum behind you, and then you can kind of dial it in from there. But here is the important principle of it. If you go and you have a deal under contract and now you start feeling pressure, I gotta close this thing in 30 days, and you start talking to, here are these 4 investors that I think might be interested. If you have just talked to them for the first time and they've heard nothing about this project, they're not gonna sign with you. They're not gonna be ready. You need to essentially let them marinate, right? Like you're seasoning your meat, so to speak, right? Like they are seeing your post, they are following you on the journey, they are seeing what's going on, and they're like processing these things. You can't just be like, hey, Bob, man, I know you love investments and real estate and helping people. I got this great deal under contract. I need 500 grand and we're gonna do this. It's gonna be amazing. No, but if you talk to Bob and Bob goes and starts, he's been following you, or he looks on your social and sees like, oh, hey, I see Brett for like every single week, just like post after post after post. I see him going and he's secret shopping and he's posting outside the big facility. He is standing in front of the fire truck. He said he just met the fire marshal to talk about his plans. He's standing in front of the planning and zoning meeting. Like he did that, right? He's showing me multiple pieces of land that he's walked through, and he's live streaming and all these kind of things. If you are documenting your journey along the way, people know you're legit. People know that you have a real commitment to do this. It's not just some like wishy-washy kind of thing. It's like, oh, let me just go and start this new venture, and then next month I'm going to jump onto something else, right? Like if you can show that here is something that you are building towards, this is your goal, you are learning from. And I want to stress this point. You don't have to be an expert in order to do this. I think most times, anytime you're new into some kind of business, right, you are not the expert. You can have expert support. I like to use the analogy of Frodo Baggins, right? You guys seen the movie Lord of the Rings? In that, you have Frodo, who is the main character. He is the hero. But along with the hero, you have all these experts, right? You have like Gandalf, the wizard, right? You have this elf that shoots bows and arrows. You have this dwarf with this big old axe, right? All these BA dudes who are there, but that's not the guy on the epic journey. That's like, it's some hobbit. It's the underdog character. Man, embrace that you are not the expert, that you are the underdog, and start documenting your journey along the way. Start literally today. 3 posts from you. That's my homework for you. 3 posts this week, 3 posts the next week, and so on until you get your deal. Because after that, you're still gonna have to post 3 times a week to fill your beds. I have KPIs for myself and for Platinum. We post at minimum 5 times a week. That is an actual goal that I track. So you can have the same goal, do it at least 3 times a week. That was a tangent, but this is important. So you should be sharing your journey, going along with this and showing I am going through all the different steps. Everything that's in that location selection course, man, that's your roadmap. Do all of those things there. You can post along that avenue there. So when you do get these investor meetings, they know you're serious, and you can go back and say, hey, check me out on my social. Here's all the different places I've been looking at, right? And so really the prep work for investors is super, super important. You got to start with that now. Then the second point of funding is your tools, your financial tools. And there's 4 main tools that I use, right? I have my business plan, I have my financial pro forma, I have the renderings of the building, and I have my blueprints, right? My architectural plans or my site plan. So the last 2 things you're probably not gonna have, right? You're probably not gonna have renderings or a full plan set from architects and stuff like that. But what I do want you to do is get the first 2 things together, right? The business plan and your financial pro forma. As you are getting ready to have meetings with the bank and with investors, those are the things they want. They want to know in your business plan, it's going to talk about, here's my location. This is why this is a great location. Here is my niche. Here is my license type. Am I doing end of life care? Am I doing independent living? Am I doing memory care, right? Am I converting a home? Am I building an awesome mansion? Your business plan says all those things and gives an overview of the numbers and your specific location and what your niche is, right? You got to paint the picture. Here's what we're doing. The opportunity is here. We've identified the problem in this local market. Here's how we're solving it. The business plan will get you started, right? It's really the first thing that I start presenting when I have an investor meeting. I'm just going to go through and show all of my 4 tools, right? It makes the investor presentation much easier because I'm just talking about these 4 things right here. Right? So business plan is important. Second to that is the financial pro forma. And so build something out. Pay someone to build something out. That's what I did, right? I went on, Upwork or Fiverr or something like that. I found someone who was great at this thing. I had an idea of how I wanted it done, and I spent a couple grand to have someone build something out. Same with my business plan, right? It wasn't perfect. I continued to update it and modify it and grow it from there, but start with something. And the financial pro forma is vastly, vastly important. How are you going to show the numbers to the bank, right? And say, hey, here's what we're gonna do. They don't care about here's what my vision is. No, I wanna see your vision plus some numbers. Show me this is gonna cash flow, right? What is your income gonna be? How do you support that? What are all of your itemized expenses gonna be? What is, the staffing ratios and rates and all those kind of things for your business? They need to see that, and then the net profit, and then, what is the debt service coverage ratio of that, and all those kind of things, right? You need that for the bank. You also need that for investors to show this is a profitable business. And here's what your cut is going to be of this, right? It's going to be in equity. It's going to be in debt. You're going to have an interest rate. You're going to have whatever it's going to be, right? This is the numbers you need to show because people are going to be giving their life savings, right? Their safety net money, their retirement money, right? It needs to go to you to raise money for this kind of stuff. And it is fantastically awesome. The deal structure you can do, the numbers you can put here, I think it's actually really, really easy to raise money because everyone knows there's a massive problem and you have all these baby boomers. But what makes it easy is 2 things. 1, a great deal, right? Don't do a crappy little deal. Don't do some little 6-bed that makes, 30 grand a month and you have $28,000 a month in expenses. That's a stupid idea, right? Build something awesome that makes sense. And second point, have amazing tools. Invest in your tools, spend some money on it, spend a lot of time on it. The better your tools are, the easier your ask is, the easier your presentation is to the bank and to investors. So the third point for funding, let's talk about banks, right? Banks are vitally important. They're going to give you the majority of the money. I love using SBA lenders. They will lend 85, 90% of the money. That's not just the land. That's not just the construction cost. That's all those things, plus all of your business money, your working capital, your safety net money. They'll lend you almost all the money, right? You just need a couple $100 grand from investors. So knocking out the bank part of this, super important because it makes it that much easier for investors. When you have the investor meeting and you say, hey, I got this proposal from this bank over here, and here's the term sheet, and they're gonna lend us, 85% of the entire deal. We just need 15%, which is roughly, $500,000, whatever that number is. There's a lot more confidence knowing, okay, there's a bank there, they're behind you. So if you are going to a place and you're making offers, you're getting close on these pieces of land that you like, you for sure need to start talking to multiple banks. And I do want to stress multiple. I would go and get multiple proposals. So that means you go and you say, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's the city I'm looking at. Here's some of the land ideas I'm looking at. Here's roughly the cost. You're going to need some ballpark idea for cost, right? Cost of the land, cost to build a mansion, cost of the site work, and then all of the working capital dollars, right? So if you don't know those numbers, check out the funding course, right? I break all that stuff down. As you are talking to these banks, you need to find out, right? Am I lendable? Am I somebody that financially looks good on paper that they want to lend to? It's going to be, here's my numbers, right? How do I look on paper? What is my W-2? What's my income like? What are my taxes like? They're going to go and send you this portal. You'll submit all your stuff. And if you look great on paper, financially speaking, cool, that's one hurdle you've jumped through. The next hurdle to jump over is the experience piece. Do you have some type of applicable experience, and how much value does the bank give that to you? It's really how risky do they think you are, right? Have you been a business person and you've run a team and done, marketing and payroll and all those things? Have you been a nurse and you have, done patient care, all of those kind of things? There's kind of both sides of this, right? They value both of these things. So who else is on your team? Do you have somebody that you're bringing on as a partner that is going to say, hey, I can fill in the gaps here. I can show you the marketing. I can show you the construction side. I can show you the operations side. All of those kind of things. They're going to look at your experience and then your greater team's experience. So with those two things in mind, I think that's kind of the starting place. You might not have all the numbers, all the details yet, but at least you can say, here's a rough idea of what I am looking to build, and my total development cost is, $3 million or something to that effect, right? And then here's me, here's my numbers, here's me on paper and my experience. The second kind of question back from them would be, hey, we can do this deal for you. We're feeling pretty confident in you, or we're not really feeling that confident in you. Here are some of the concerns that we have, and we think you're a little bit more of a riskier borrower for experience reasons, or maybe financial reasons, or a combination of both. And then it goes back to, well, can you do the deal with an additional guarantor on the line? Meaning you, as the principal, right, you're going to sign on the dotted line and personally guarantee. Do you need to bring in somebody who also has to personally guarantee, right, to lower the amount of risk? Does that person have to be a partner who's coming in to be a financial guarantor, or do they have to come in because they have experience and bring financial guarantee also? So there's kind of different layers of this, but if you don't know, if you haven't asked this question, man, you're getting way too far down the track without getting feedback from the bank and getting a pre-approval from them. You're not going to get hard loan commitment yet. That's later on down the process, but you need at least want to come in with a pre-approval letter and term sheet from the bank that you can continue to negotiate with later as you are dialing in these numbers. And then on the banks, I want to share one other kind of tidbit here is this is a very, very specific niche. And there's some banks that will just say, nope, I don't know enough about the space. I don't do it. I'm not into it. There's some banks that this is their niche. This is their bread and butter, right? They say, hey, you know what? We do assisted living. We do nursing homes. We do these things, and we know those things, and we know how these numbers work. And they are banks that I think are more realistic to get the deal done for you, because I've had teams that we work with, they've gotten pre-approval, they're getting close to the funding table, and it's been a bank that we've never worked with. And they just pulled the plug. They're like, nope, not for us. We didn't understand the risk. Or you know what? A lot of times you get the front-facing, loan person, and they'll say, oh yeah, we look good. I'll send you a term sheet, all that kind of stuff. Then they send it up the chain to underwriting, and then underwriting's like, nope, not going to happen for us. We're not going to do this kind of deal. So just because you get a term sheet doesn't mean they're actually going to perform and do the deal on these things when it goes up the chain. So I do think starting this early and starting it with more banks so that you can negotiate against them and you have really a backup plan if one of the banks pulls the plug. So the last thing on the funding is the deal structure. How are you putting this whole deal together, right? And after you've talked to a bank and you have like investors that are interested, now you go and you start creating your offer. Is it first and foremost, is it going to be a joint venture kind of deal? Is it going to be a syndication kind of deal? And that's really going to go back to how much money do I need to raise? Do I need to raise 300 grand? I might go this way. Do I need to raise $1 million? I'm probably going to go this way, right? So a lot of that goes back to the bank says they're going to lend me X amount of money, right? If it's 80%, that's totally different than if they're going to lend you 90%, because that's a massive difference of capital you need to raise, and it might push you one way or the other. And then you got to get into the entity creation, right? I have a whole bunch of entities that I do for asset protection on here, right? You have your real estate side, then you have your holding companies, then you have your operations company side, and you have your management companies. And then you have layers of that, not only yours, but then your partners, entities, and all these kind of things together. Then all the paperwork and the operating agreements, those things, they're not something you do overnight, right? Like you have to get all of these ducks in a row. So it is important that you're starting months early on this kind of stuff. And then you got to take all these numbers and plug it into the calculator and say, okay, well, here's going to be my NOI. Here's what we're looking at on our appraisal. I want to offer, this percent, right, to my potential investors. Here's kind of where I want to start. Here's what I think is a fair, equitable position for the capital they're going to bring in, balancing risk and reward and all those kind of things, right? So you have to have all of those numbers kind of put together so that you can say, hey, here, investor, I have all of my numbers, right? Here's my appraisal back. Here is my hard bid from my builder. Here's what my land cost is going to be. Here's the whole deal, right? And based on this, here's my NOI and your cut will be this. So I say all this stuff, right? And if it seems overwhelming to you, it's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to lie. That was just the funding part, right? Then there was all the stuff on location selection. So there's a lot of things that have to go into this. This is not a crappy little deal. This is a big life-changing deal. And really only some people can get it done. I'm going to be blunt. Like it's hard and it's awesome and it's so financially rewarding, but it's not little and it's not easy. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh man, that sounds like a lot of work and it's gonna take some time. Yeah, it's gonna take some time. So what I'm telling you is start early, right? Don't get too far down the track because doing all the fun stuff, right? Looking at land and all that kind of stuff, driving, making an offer, that's the fun stuff. You gotta get all the hard work done as well, right? You gotta balance these two things so that honestly, they finish at the same time in order for you to do one amazing deal. So to wrap this up, I want you to do an awesome deal. I want you to be prepared for this. And so I'm pushing you back again to the website, assistedlivingmansion.com. You can go and hit those courses, location selection and funding. While you're there, check out what we do. You can book a call with our team, 15 minutes. We'll talk to you about how we become the missing link to your potential deal. So I'll catch you all on the next one.